I'm going to try and cover a lot of ground today, and so pull out your pens and papers because you're going to need to take some notes down. As I've said before, a short pencil is better than a long memory. And so I want you to write things down so that you don't forget them. You can go and share them with your friends, and you can come back and sort of relearn, go through these notes, and relearn again the things that you need to know. Let me just begin with a small recap, okay? We're working at learning 8 biblical principles on good, financial stewardship that leads to wealth, how to create wealth. And the first secret that we learned was that God is the giver of wealth. And the Bible gives several instances of times when God chose to bless a man, even a family like Job's family, with so much wealth that they became renowned in their age and generation as being wealthy. God is not afraid of wealth. And it is to him that we go to ask that he would bless us. There's nothing wrong with praying that God would give you financial wealth and material wealth. He delights to bless his children. What you don't want to do is to steal from God. You cannot steal from God and then ask him to turn around and bless you. When you steal from him, then what he does is withhold his blessings to you. Where you're unfaithful, then he will not be faithful to bless you. He will use the same measure that you have used. And so you want to be careful as you look to God to bless you. Make sure that you have blessed God too. And he gives us a very simple way to do that when he calls us to give a tenth of everything that he gives us. Because he's the one who gives us in the first place to give a tenth back to him. And so you want to be diligent about that and make sure that you give him that. And you may not have a regular income like, a salary. But whenever God puts, new resources into your hands, when the resources in your hands grow through investments, be careful to give God back what is his. The second secret we said is that without a vision, a people perish. If you don't know where you're going, you're not going to end up anywhere. And so you want to define clearly what it is that you're asking of God and where it's going to go. Put down a list of goals, financial goals that you want God to enable you to fulfill through the course of your life or in a given time period. And pray about them. Keep bringing them up to God. The third secret we learned last week, and it is that it is people who budget that create wealth. Or put it this way, if you consume everything that God puts into your hands, then you are like the farmer when he went to the National Seed Board. He was given seed maize to go and plant and seed beans to go and plant, and he went and he ate them. And then he began to decry the fact that he has no harvest. But he ate his seed, and there was nothing to plant. If you're consuming everything that God is putting in your hands, and you have not learned to put aside some as seed to invest, then you will find, yes, in the moment you are full, but at the end of the day, you are not able to create wealth. You don't eat your seed. You put that aside, and you plant it, you invest it, so that it can give you a harvest of wealth. And so we said the rule of thumb is, if you're living on more than 60% of your income, you're eating your seed and you're living beyond your means. 60%. And you remember what that 60% with. So let me just show you. If these things are true of you, you're living beyond your means. It's not just a 60%, but listen in. Number one, you never have any money left at the end of the month. You're eating everything that God puts in your hands. You're living beyond your means. Your bills are spiraling out of control. You haven't budgeted well. There are things that you did not put on that budget, and therefore they come and consume everything else that you're trying to save aside, and you're living beyond your means. Number three, you carry a budget, or rather you carry a balance on your credit card. Cosmo Gatera will come and tell you about, debt and the burden of debt. And one of the worst ways to accumulate debt is through credit cards. Now, debit cards are different, but credit cards eventually are a bad investment unless you have the financial discipline to put aside what you need to manage them and to also save. And so if you carry a balance on your credit card at the end of the month, you're being robbed. Let me just say something small about this, and I know Cosmo will come and teach about this. If you read the small print on your credit card when you're signing it, it says that you are charged at a rate of 3.5 or 3% per month for the balance remaining on the credit card. Does anybody know this? You've read the fine print, okay? 3% per month, which means your annual interest rate on a credit card, what is called the APR, okay? The APR, annual percentage rate on your credit card, is about 30 to 35% interest. This is why when your credit card bill comes at the end of the month, they allow you to pay only 10%. And you think they're doing you a favor. But in actual fact, the bank manager, when they send all those credit card bills, gets on his knees. He prays, "Oh Lord, please make them foolish so that they don't pay. They only pay 10% and we will get all that interest." Banks love those who take credit cards. And they especially love those who don't pay back the full amount. And if this is you, your wealth is being whittled away. And you think that when you flash a gold card that you've got a lot of, and when we were in high school, some of you who were in high school in the early 70s will remember this word. You've got pedo, or you've got, we used to call it mastingly. You know, you're shining because you have a gold card, but that thing is eating you. Credit cards are a bad investment. You have no emergency fund. If you lost your job today, you would not be able to put food on the table, you would not be able to pay your school fees, and you have no emergency fund. That is a sign that you're living beyond your means. Here's another one. You borrow loans from friends and from family and from workmates on a regular basis, and you're always taking an advance on your salary. That is a sign that you're living beyond your means. Number 7, your total debt burden exceeds 30% of your income. I talked last week about giving a 10% tithe to the Lord, putting aside 10% for retirement, putting aside 10% for long-term investments so that you can buy shares and those sorts of things, growing your money, and putting aside 10% for short-term investments, replacing your fridge, the car, and the things that die. So 40% goes into your savings. When you take a mortgage, your mortgage is part of your retirement, okay? If you're buying a house, it's a long-term retirement, okay? And so you can use the 10% for your retirement to pay back the mortgage. But the mortgage is also a long-term investment in an asset that appreciates over time. So you can use your 10% for long-term investments into your mortgage. And then you can squeeze the other 10%. You can't diminish it completely because your fridge will still die. But you can squeeze that and take 5% out of that and leave 5% so that you can, still replace your fridge when it dies. So now you have the 10% retirement, 10% long-term investment, 5% from your short-term investments, and then you go back to your budget and you find another 5%. Altogether, you have 30%. When banks give you a loan, they want to see your budget and they want to see your income because they're trying to calculate what your debt burden is, what you can carry and not crush. And if it goes over 30%, 25% actually, then they can give you the loan. If they can see there's 25% that you can pay back with. But banks are also in the business of putting you in debt so that they can charge you. So some banks will give you a loan even when it goes over 25%, at 35%, even at 40%, some banks will give you a loan. When they do that, they know that if there is any emergency in your life, umeisha, you're finished because you have no capacity. When the interest rates go up, you're finished because you have no capacity. And you must set the limit yourself and say, my debt burden for the car loan, for the mortgage, can never go over 25%. And if it goes over 30, then I am living beyond my means. I have too much debt, and it is going to eventually ruin me. Those are indicators of whether you're living within your means or not. Okay? Now, I would like to show you a diagram. Will you be able to put this up? Okay? There's some graphs I want to show you. The first graph, if the guys at the back would put it up, is a blue line that indicates your salary, okay? And over time, your income goes up. Okay, I say to the ones who are young, 25 years, you're on a starter salary, 20,000 shillings, it's not much, but by the time you're 40, your income would have doubled, tripled, it will go up over time. So this graph is a graph of, spread over time. Your salary goes up. But then the second graph now has a red line. And if you watch the red line, can you see it? Yes, we're there? I can't see it, so I'm guessing that they're changing. Okay, the red line is the fool who doesn't know how to budget. Because he's eating his seed. And as his income grows up, there is lifestyle creep in his life. And he begins to expend more because he has more money. He wasn't saving when his income was small. He's not saving now that it's gone big. He's consuming everything. So move on to the third graph. The third graph is a wise man. You can see the red line is well below the blue line. That difference between the red line and the blue line is your capacity to create wealth. If the red line and the blue line are the same, then you have no capacity to create wealth. The bigger the difference between those two graphs, the greater your capacity to create wealth. And that is a wise man who puts aside money so that he can create wealth, okay? Now, is there a fourth graph? Yes, at the back? We'll put the fourth graph. I'm going to have to look at this because I can't remember what the fourth graph is. Let me explain it to you, okay? Here we go. The fourth graph is, again, the opportunity to increase your income because you have invested. But if the red line is following the blue line, you are a fool because you have no capacity to create wealth. You might be living well, but you're eating it all. The fifth graph is again the wise man because there is a difference between the two. And the new income doesn't get eaten up in lifestyle creep and in upgrading your lifestyle. Okay, now let's move on to today's lesson. All that was a recap, and I want to move on to today's lesson. Incidentally, with those graphs, let me share a verse with you that you've probably never seen, okay? Proverbs chapter 21 and verse 20. This is what it says. The fool spends his money as fast as he gets it. So when I say the fool, I'm not the one who's using bad words. It's the Bible calling you a fool, okay? In fact, the New International Bible puts it this way. The fool gulps his money down. Do you know what gulping money is, or gulping something? When you gulp food, most of us eat sensibly. You put food in your mouth and you chew it and then you swallow it. But the fool gulps his money down. You're stuffing your mouth and you don't even chew it, you just swallow. That's what you're doing when you're consuming everything, including your seed, and you will never create wealth. But let's turn to today's lesson so that I can teach you principle number 4. And incidentally, there's somebody who asked, I don't earn a salary. What do I do? Today, I will answer that question, okay? Exodus chapter 3, verse 1 to 10, and then I'm going to flip over to chapter 4, okay? Read with me if you have your Bible. One day, Moses was tending the flock for his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led the flock far into the wilderness and came to Sinai, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the middle of a bush. Moses stared in amazement. Though the bush was engulfed in flames, it didn't burn. This is amazing, Moses said to himself. Why isn't that bush burning up? I must go and see it. When the Lord saw Moses coming to take a closer look, God called him from the middle of the bush. Moses, Moses, here am I, Moses replied. Do not come any closer, the Lord warned him. Take off your sandals, for you are standing on holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. When Moses heard this, he covered his face because he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said to him, I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries of distress because of their harsh slave drivers. Yes, I am aware of their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians and lead them out of Egypt into their own fertile and spacious land. It is a land flowing with milk and honey, the land where the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites now live. Look, the cry of the people of Israel has reached me, and I have seen how harshly the Egyptians abuse them. Now go, for I am sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people Israel out of Egypt. But Moses protested to God, who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt? And you know the story. Moses kept making excuse after excuse after excuse so that he would not go. And God told him, Moses, go, go, go. Finally, Moses asked for a sign to confirm that he had been sent by God. And so turn to chapter 4. I'll read the first 4 verses of Exodus chapter 4. But Moses protested again. What if they won't believe me or listen to me? What if I say the Lord has never appeared? What if they say the Lord never appeared to you? Then the Lord asked Moses, what is that in your hands? A shepherd's staff, Moses replied. Throw it down on the ground, the Lord told him. So Moses threw down the staff and it turned into a snake. Moses jumped back. Then the Lord told him, reach out and grab it by the tail. So Moses reached out and grabbed it, and it turned back into a shepherd's staff in his hand. Did you hear the financial principle there? Okay? You missed it. Let me walk with you through this. Okay? God asked Moses, what is that in your hand? And when Moses said to him, it's just a stick, a staff. It's a dead, lifeless piece of wood. But did you notice that God is able to take what is in your hands and use it to accomplish his purposes? Let me give you a couple of examples, because in the book of Judges, you see this over and over again. He used the jawbone of a donkey to bring victory to Israel through Samson. He used an ox goad. You know, it's a little stick with, a string at the end of it that was used by shepherds or by herders. An ox goad to defeat the Philistines through Shamgar. He used a tent peg in Deborah's hands to defeat the Canaanites. He used trumpets and jars to defeat the Midianites through Gideon. He used a slingshot in a little boy's hands, David, to defeat a giant. In each of these cases, what God is demonstrating to us is that it's not what is in your hands that really matters. It is that He has determined to bring about the result that He wants in victory. And so the question that God asks you is, what's that in your hands? And you answer and you say, oh God, it's just a hobby. Oh God, it's just a skill that I have. Oh God, it's just something I love to do. Oh God, it's that I like to write. Oh God, it's an ability with my hands to fix cars. Oh God, I'm able to solve problems. Oh God, I type fast. Oh God, I can draw well. And to you, it is a dead, lifeless little thing. So did you notice the second thing about that story of Moses? Okay? Not only can he use anything to win the battle, doesn't matter how big or how small it is, but did you notice that in Moses' hands, this stick was a dead, lifeless object. But when Moses obeyed the Lord and used that stick as God had told him to use it, throw it to the ground, Moses, in a sense, he let go of it and allowed it to be used of God. It became a living object with power in it. In this case, the power of a snake. But when he picked it up back into his hands, it became dead again. When he threw it to the ground as God commanded him, it became alive, powerful. And God has put something in your hands. But the problem is you're holding on to it. And as long as you're holding on to it and you do not allow God to be the one to use it, it is a dead object in your hands. And it will never accomplish anything. There are those things that you need to give back to the Lord. First of all, to recognize what they are and give them back to the Lord in obedience so that he can breathe life into them and use them to deliver you from your financial stress. So secret number 4 is simply this. What's that in your hands? Now let me explain this, because maybe, you're still saying, I don't have anything in my hands. And for those of you who say, I'm not on salary, listen carefully. I took this principle and decided to use it on myself. Okay? I live on 1 acre of land. So I sat down with a piece of paper and a pen, and I named all the things that God has put into my hands, including that 1 acre plot of land. And then I asked the Lord, Lord, would you take these things in my hands and bring them to life and use them to create wealth for me? Let me tell you what I'm doing, okay? When you enter the gate of my house, the first thing you're going to see are my security dogs. Let me show you a picture of the bowbells I keep. Okay? I keep bowbells. A full-grown bowbell weighs about 70 to 90 kilos, which is more than most of you here. The ladies who are here and slim, and even some of the guys, you don't weigh 70 to 90 kilos. In other words, this is a take-you-down dog. You don't mess with me. You don't come and visit me in the night. This dog will take you down. 70 to 90 kilos. Okay? Now, how does this work? God has given me a love for dogs. I love dogs. I've always had dogs. I've always kept dogs. But they were just dogs, dead, lifeless dogs, so to say. Many of you have what are called Shenzi dogs. You know Shenzi dogs? They are a breed of everything that can breed, okay? They're not pure breeds like this. Let me tell you the difference between a pure breed and a Shenzi dog, okay? A pure breed comes with a birth certificate. By the way, it's called a pedigree. That's what the birth certificate is called. It shows you who the parents were, the grandparents, the great-grandparents, about 6 generations, to show that they were all pure breeds, okay? And the difference between a Shenzi dog and a pure breed is this. When a thief comes to your place, the dog goes up to the gate and says, "Whoo!" And you tremble, "Whoo!" in a bass, okay? The Shenzi dog creeps under the car. And then it goes, "Wait, no. Wait, no. It's not able to protect you. Mine protect me. But let me tell you about my pedigrees, okay? God put a love for dogs in my hands. What's that in your hands? And so I have dogs. Each puppy of this breed costs between 80,000 and 100,000. That's how much they cost, okay? Now, you go to OLX and you find many going for 35,000. Be very careful. Because Kenyans are doing the Kenyan thing. You know, they find a brown dog and another one and they call it a bobel. And they try and sell it to you for 35, but it's not a pure breed and it's not the real dog, okay? The real one costs about 80,000 to about 100,000, okay, when they're young. I buy 3. I buy a male and 2 females, okay? So I'm spending about 240 to 300,000 for my puppies. Now, you may say, how can you afford to pay that much for a dog? This is what I do. You breed each female once a year. They come into heat twice a year. But I only breed once a year, so my puppies are strong. If you overbreed the dog, you get weak puppies and they're not many. But when you breed them once a year, my female just gave birth 2 weeks ago. I have puppies right now, okay? It gave birth to 13 puppies, okay? And you care for those puppies. Now, if I have 13 puppies twice a year, that is 26 puppies. You care for those puppies, and then when they're 8 weeks old, you sell them for the price of your original dog. The dog pays for itself, it pays for its food, and it gives you profit. And so here are the maths, guys, okay? You don't skimp on the food. You can tell a man who has puppies and who knows about dogs because you find them in the supermarket, their cart is full of mincemeat and chicken and eggs and Weetabix. That's what the puppies eat. So I have a friend who told me, I kept asking why my puppies are so small and feeble. Kumbe, the guy who looked after them, said, these dogs are eating better than me. So you take those things and give them his ugali. And the dogs were weak and feeble. But you don't skimp on the dog. And by the time you are ready to sell the dog, you have given it jabs, parvo and rabies and etc. And you have fed it well. You will end up spending almost 20 to 30,000 per puppy by the time they're 8 weeks old and ready to be sold. But for me, with my, 13 puppies, okay? For me, with my 13 puppies, times about 20,000, it comes to, 200,000, much more, okay? I spend the money up front. But when I sell them at 80 to 100,000 each, I will walk away with $1 million. What's that in your hand? Enda uambie hiyo shenzi dog, kwenda wewe, kwenda. And go and look for a proper dog. And it doesn't have to be big, okay? These ones are big. I spend about, on their food and, care. I spend about, it comes to about 12,000 shillings a month on their food and care, okay? But if it was not for these dogs, I would have been having a watchman or somebody to guard the property. And because I'm not in an estate, I have to carry the cost myself. It's the same. But these dogs are loyal. They'll never bring their friends over to rob me at night, So my dogs make me money. Because that's what God put in my hand. And I gave it back to him and I asked him to bless it. Let me give you another one. Kitchen garden. Second thing you'll see on my garden is I'm on an acre. And about, 1/16 behind the kitchen, we have set aside. It's probably about as big as this stage, okay? We've set aside as our kitchen garden. I grow pumpkins and sukuma and terere and spinach and chili pepper and hoho on that property. We never go to buy those vegetables. This little property over there is enough to feed a family. Now, they don't make me money, but they save me money so that I can put aside money. Third thing you'll see is I have a lot of plants and flowers in my garden. What you will not see is that in the middle of those plants and flowers, I also plant as ornamental plants, plants that we can also consume in the kitchen. There are herbs, there are spices like thyme, there is lemongrass, there is mint, there is lavender. all they're mixed in with the flowers and they just look nice. But when you want tea with lemongrass, I know what corner of the garden to go to, and I can give you tea with lemongrass. Again, they don't make me money, but they save me money. I have trees. I've planted many trees. It was a bare patch. No trees when I went to it, and so I've planted many trees. We have been on that property now for about 15 years. But my trees also are trees of pawpaw and loquats and avocados and lemons and mangoes are also part of my trees. So they look like landscape. But if you know them, you will recognize the trees on my compound because they give me something that we can consume. I have 6 beehives on the compound also, okay? And I harvest honey 3 times a year. Now, if you know honey, each hive gives you about 9 kilos of honey. And each kilo of honey goes for 1,000 shillings on the market in Kenya. So do the maths. 9 times 6, okay, is 54, okay? 54 times 1,000. And you know the good thing about bees? Guys, let me tell you. The good thing about bees is they never take a sick day off. They don't ask for a Sabbath day. And they go into your neighbor's compound and they steal his wealth and they bring it to you. Now you may say, okay, I'm on a K8. What do I do? I began to look at my property and to say, Lord, give me divine ideas on how I can increase my honey production. I'm a pastor. I can't, do, business while I'm also pastoring. I'm focused on pastoring. So I want these different models that will allow me to make a passive income, which is what bees are. They allow you to make a passive income. And I began to see, I have a house. And there is this space between the ceiling and the roof of the house. It's all empty. It's called the attic. So I told my wife, what about we put, hives up there? And so we prepared some space and, put cardboard and etc. and are in the process of putting hives up there. Because the bees just need an entry point, a small hole to get in. They will create the honey. They go out, they get the honey, they come back, and they put it in the hive. And so if you have access to your attic, which most houses do, because there's some sort of, door that you go into the attic, you can go there 3 times a year and harvest your honey. And so I now keep bees. I can actually, on my compound, I estimate, I have 6 hives. I can actually keep about 50 hives. And that's what I want to build up to. And the initial investment is small. You go and buy a hive, industrial area, not these ones along, Gong Road and such, but proper made hives. Industrial area, they'll cost you 9,000 shillings a hive, okay? And then you buy a centrifuge so that you put the what do you call them? Oh dear, I've forgotten. Okay, you put the cones, the honey cones in that, and then you centrifuge the honey out of them. And then you put back the cones so that the bees don't have to do the hard work of making wax and making the cones again and then storing honey in them. You give them back their honey, storage facilities, so all they do is fill them up again. And you come and centrifuge and you put them back again. That centrifuge costs about 15,000 shillings. One can serve as many hives as you have. And so 9,000 shillings per hive, 15,000 shillings for a centrifuge, and then you sell, like I'm going to tell you. This honey you get in the supermarket, watch here. That one is not good. It's mixed with honey, it's mixed with it's mixed with sugar, and it's mixed with sukaringuru, and it's not real honey. When you taste real honey, you will know it. When you smell it, you will know what real honey is. So next time you need honey, give me a call. What's that you have in your hands, okay? I looked at my compound, and I thought to myself, meat is one of those expensive things. What if I keep rabbits? So I keep rabbits, okay? And we keep them for consumption. Rabbits give you 3 things as a product. One is very lean meat that is like chicken, okay? Number 2 is they give you the pelt, the fur, and you can actually sell that on the market for leather. And then number 3 is their urine. There is no better fertilizer for crops than rabbit urine. And if you mix a rabbit urine with a little water and spray it on your sukuma, then it also kills aphids and insects and those sorts of things as a natural, product. So if you come and see my sukuma garden, I asked the guy who works with me, at home, how come these sukumas are so big? Is this a new variety? He told me, Apana, this is rabbit susu power. Okay, what's that in your hands? One of the things that God has given us as Kenyans and as Africans is plenty of sunshine. And so I have solar heaters for all the hot water in our house. Because we have more sunshine than we know what to do with. It's only recently that the government has started enforcing that homes with more than 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms have to have solar heater so that they don't use electricity. But electricity is expensive. And solar heaters can heat your water to about 90 degrees. It is so blistering hot that you can't wash with direct, water. You have to cool it down. And it's free. The investment of a solar heater is about 100,000 on your roof installed, and then it will go for another at least 6 to 9 years, giving you hot water free from the sun. What's that you have in your hands? One of the things I learned to do early on as I was putting the house together is water harvesting. Kenya is a water-starved region. And no matter what we do as Kenyans, water will always be an issue. And you need to harvest your water. All the roof space collects water that drips down to the ground and is soaked up into the ground and goes to the aquifer below. God is raining blessings on you. God is showering your property with blessings. And you consider rain to be a hassle. Do you know how I started keeping bees? It wasn't an original idea. I'm not very clever. But I have a friend called Beatrice. And we were in Bible study together in our e-group. And went to her house. And she told us how bees had come. And they had made a home in one of the pots in our garden that was empty. And she had thought to herself, what am I going to do with these bees? I need to get rid of these bees because they can sting my family, they can sting my children. So she was going to go and call one of these guys who work with bees to come and remove these bees. Then she thought to herself, maybe this is God blessing me. And she thought, if I put those bees into a hive, instead of getting the guy to come and remove them, let me go and buy a hive and then get him to come and move them into a hive. And I will put the hive in a safe place. So she did. I kid you not, but today she has a honey industry. It became a business. God gives each of us rain, and He showers us with free water. What are you doing with yours? It runs into the ground, into the road. My neighbors, because I was one of the first people to go into the part where I am, my neighbors recently built, a house in the neighborhood. And there was a question of what do we do with all the water that collects when it rains. I told him, please make a way and let that water come into my compound. And the guy did. And then the other day I saw him digging a borehole. I thought, I don't have a borehole. But I have never, in the 14 years I have been in Karen, I have never lacked for water in my home. And Karen is water stressed. You know why? Because I went and dug a very deep hole in the ground, and all that water from my neighbors and all the one from the road, I took the road one and I diverted it into my compound. When it rains, I have a pond that has about a capacity of 500,000 liters that the water runs into. And for the rest of the year, my grass is always green when everybody else's is dry, because I have more water than I know what to do with. I not only collect the rainwater, I not only collect this one from my neighbors, but all the bath water and the kitchen water I also collect. It's called gray water. And if it doesn't need to go to the septic tank from the toilets, when you wash with about, a shower is 25 to 30 liters of water. You use a bit of soap, and that's it. Do you realize that we flush our toilets with drinking water? Have you ever thought about it? How foolish can we be? And we have all this gray water that we're wasting, and then we're water stressed and having to bring the bozer to come and bring water to our place. And God is giving you free water. What's that you have in your hands? What else? Remember, I sat down with a piece of paper and I began to ask, Lord, what have you given me in this place? Okay, I have a beautiful garden because I have all the water I need. I have, wonderful grass that is always, green. And there are things I haven't yet opened up. Let me tell you 7 things I haven't opened up, and I'm working at opening them up. Number 1 is a wedding garden for photographs, because my garden is now becoming known for its beauty. Okay? Number 2 is chicken. I have enough space to not only keep the rabbits, but also to keep chicken. Okay? Because they don't take much. Number 3 is many of you have lazy cars. You go to town to work, you park the car, you pay city council. Remember what I told you? If you have money that doesn't know what to do and doesn't have a job description, it works for somebody else or it just becomes lazy. Many of your cars are working for the city council. Many of your cars are working for your company who have given you parking. Why don't you Uber that car and make it work for you? It sits lazy from 8:30 in the morning until 4:30 in the evening, and then it sits lazy at night. You don't need it. But if you could find a trustworthy person, it could be making money for you as Uber. So Ubering your car, or maybe doing school runs. We have children we adopted not too long ago. And they were in our Nairobi Chapel School, Logos, Christian school, which is over near the Arboretum. And my wife and I, because we had our own children who have grown up and are married now, we said, wow, I don't know that we can do the school runs anymore. We're too old for school runs now. So we found a neighbor who has a child in the same school, and we would pay them to take our child, pick them up at our place, drop them with their child, pick them up in the afternoon, bring them back home. But that man is using his car to make money. And you could do the same with yours. Do school runs, okay? Artwork. My wife is a fine artist. So in the early days, when we were really struggling, she used to draw hand-drawn cards and sell them for Christmas and for birthdays. And she'd make money off that. I shared this with one of our pastors. You probably know him, Pastor Kabibi. He's a fine artist. And he now is doing fine art pictures that he sells for 20, 30, 40,000 per picture. Your own pastor here is an artist. And I can guess that the gift he gave my wife, which he said is an artwork, well, it was done by the young man over there. But he does some beautiful artwork. And he can actually make money off it. Baking for sale, which you can do, and we can do. We have an oven. It sits empty most of the time. We can actually use it to make money. Writing books, in my case as a pastor, I've spoken on so many topics, so many sermons, I can actually coalesce them into a book and write Bible study material on it and sell it. Recently, I thought to myself, I have a guest wing that is separate from the main house, and that thing sits empty waiting for the occasional visitors who come to our place. You go to the web today and you'll find I have listed it on Airbnb. And I'm praying for guests. So the question is, good people, what's that in your hands? God has not left you without anything. The problem oftentimes is we sit and wait for a salary. We sit and wait for somebody to employ us. We sit and cry out to God that, I need money, I don't have. But God has given you so many skills, so many, ways that you can create money and create wealth. What's that you have in your hands? Name it, give it to God, and let Him breathe life into it so that it can create wealth for you. Now, let me tell you how this works, okay? None of these different ways that I've spoken about here in my case make tons of money for me. Even with my dogs, if I sell all the puppies in a year, I get $1 million, okay? And it's not like, some super duper win the lottery 20 million sort of thing. It's not that much money. But little by little by little over the years, it adds up to something. And when I get that $1 million from the dogs, I can go and invest it so that it continues to give birth to new children as an investment. Here's what the Bible says, okay? In the book of Ecclesiastes chapter 11 and verse 2, it says, listen carefully everyone, okay? Invest in 7 ventures. Yes, even 8. For you do not know what disaster may come upon the land. At the minimum, you should ask God to open your eyes to see at least 7 different ventures that you can invest in. And the ventures that I invest in, and I told you of 9, and I have another 7 that I have realized I can also invest in. They do not ask for time from me. They do not ask for energy from me. They do not take my focus away from the call of God on my life as a pastor. Some of them are passive like the bees. I'm not even the one who harvests the honey. I determined to show the young man who works for me so that one day he can do the same. I determined to show him how to do this. There is a training place at Lenana, okay, just before the school, where they teach beekeeping and hives. And it's not much. And it's only, I think, 3 weeks of training. And so you can send somebody there, they can go and learn. You buy the clothes to harvest the honey, and he can do it. He now does it. I don't have to do anything about it. All I do is keep a record of how much honey we got, and the bees do their own work. It's passive completely. Let me say this. Some of you have ancestral land in the rural area, and it's too far away for you to farm. But you can go and put avocado trees. They will take 5 years to grow, and then they will start giving avocados. And you can then have somebody there look after them. They will pay him, and they will give you a profit. And if your area isn't avocado area, then plant mango trees if you're coming from a hot area. And they will give you a harvest, and there's good money in them. Or you can keep chickens in that rural property. Or you can breed dogs in that rural property. But right now, the 2 acres that your father left behind for you is sitting idle. And when land or assets sit idle, they work for somebody else, or they become lazy, or ultimately, they just waste your money. What's that God has put in your hands? And how are you going to use it? Invest in 7 ventures. Yes, even in 8, for you do not know what disaster may come upon the land. You should look and open up these. Let me give you an example in Scripture of somebody who did this. But you should look and open up the possibilities that God has already put in your hands. Read with me Proverbs 31, the Proverbs 31 woman, okay? This is what it says. A wife of noble character who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. Okay, verse 13 says this. She selects wool and flax and works with eager hands. So number 1, notice, her wool and her flax knitting seems to be a cottage industry. Okay? Verse 14, she is like the merchant ships, bringing her food from afar. She gets it while it is still night. She provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. Verse 16, she considers a farm, a field, and buys it. So number 2, she's got a cottage industry where she's making something with the wool and flax, maybe shawls, maybe cardigans or something. But number 2, she's a land speculator. And she's buying properties and maybe farming them, maybe selling them off. And then verse 16 goes on to say, out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. So she makes a profit on the fields and then goes and plants a vineyard that she can then use to sell the grapes or alternatively make wine. Okay? That's her third industry. She also farms. Verse 17, she sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her tasks. She sees that her trading is profitable. So she's also a trader. She's got like a stall in the market where she's selling things, okay? Verse 18 goes on to say, and her lamp never goes out at night. In her hand she holds the distaff and grasps the spindle with her fingers. A spindle and a staff is what you make cloth out of. You weave hand-woven cloth. So she's making hand-woven cloth at night and presumably selling it. Verse 20, she opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. She makes bed covers for her bed. She is clothed in fine linen and purple. So number 6, she makes her own clothes on top of the ones that she's using flax and wool to make, presumably to sell. And the clothes she makes for her family may not be making money for her, but they save money. Okay? Now, these are 6 different ventures that this woman has. We're not done. Verse 23, her husband is respected at the city gates, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. Part of what she's selling in the marketplace. And she supplies the merchants with sashes. So she's also a wholesaler. Because others are buying from her and going to sell. This is a Proverbs 31 woman. And it's talking about the woman. But for all of us, what is that God has put in your hands? Some of you like to tinker with cars. But you can actually do special jobs of restoring cars and of managing, people's service. And do it as something you do over the weekend. That is a non-crucial, fun thing that you're doing. Ecclesiastes 11 verse 2. Invest in 7 ventures. Yes, even in 8. For you do not know when the day of disaster will come upon you. So let me finish with a little story. My daughter, I have a daughter who got married at the end of last year, in September of last year, okay? She went to USIU. But before she went, when she was a young girl, a teenager, I used to make money as a photographer when I was in college, okay? To pay for my school fees for theological college. And I specialized in weddings and funerals. I was never a good photographer, but I understood enough that I could take good photos. So I taught her photography. And she really fell in love with it. And she decided she wanted to invest in photography and to learn. So through the high school years going into college, she actually became a really good photographer, to the place where she became a professional photographer. One of the only lady photographers in this country. She's featured many times in the newspapers, in magazines, in blog sites, and etc., etc. She recently won a contract with Safaricom to be one of their, retainer photographers, so that she's on call. And several other companies, she's doing fashion photography for some European companies, etc., etc. She's become really professional at this. It started as a hobby when she was in high school and then going on into university. And when she went to university, she realized, USIU has all these kids who come from Tanzania, from Uganda, from Nigeria, Ghana, all these places. And anyone who sends their kids from Ghana here must be very wealthy. And these are, kids who are about 18 years old. When my daughter did her Form 4, I decided I wanted to put some gaps in here, there, so that she can grow up. And so we put about 2 years. And she was always ahead of her class in terms of her maturity and her age. And so all the rest of the class is 18 years old. My daughter is 21. And she says, Dad, you can't believe those kids in my class. I charge them 60,000 for portrait photographs. And they pay. These are our classmates When she was in year 2, she's now taking year 1. When she was in year 3, she's taking year 1 and year 2. She made a lot of money that way. And she began to finance her own school fees. Now that's one of her businesses. With all this money, she decided that she was going to go and buy land, subdivide it, put in beacons, and then sell it. She began flipping land in Molo, in places like Nanyuki, in Konza. So she comes and tells me, Dad, I've just bought 2 acres in Konza. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, I don't have land in Konza. But you know, she began to flip land and to make money flipping land. And then she fell in love with a young man who, he was actually a banker as a career, but he was getting bored with banking, and he decided to go into agriculture. And so together, they began to hire land in Ukambani, okay? 1 acre of land is what they started with. And they would grow bullet chilies for export to the UK. She was making, on average, 50,000 shillings a month. That became too small. They now have 20 acres that they hire in Gilgil, next to water, next to a dam. And they are now growing bullet chilies and French beans. The guy quit his banking job and he went into this. And my daughter is good with the money, the finances, the structures. He's good on the ground, looking after the plants, talking to the workers. So he now farms 24/7. She manages the clients overseas. And they're making a good, 500,000 a month from farming bullet chilies and green beans. And she's just asking the question, what is that God has put in your hands? So she has 3 careers right now. She flips land, she farms, and she's also a professional photographer. And you probably have heard of her. She's called Tanti. What's that God has put in your hands? And even if you don't have a job, you have skills, abilities. You can turn them into blessings if you name them and give them back to God. God bless you. Thank you.